We've got a jam-packed episode of Whether or Not. We've got nature in the news stories on the polar vortex, also recovery efforts in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. And in this week's feature, Penn State meteorology students head out to Southern California to check out the National Weather Association annual meeting. That and more, Whether or Not, starts right now. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Whether or Not. I'm your host, Juklo.
And I'm your forecaster for the week, Jake Langedyk.
Well, Jake, we just got back from the NWA trip last week.
Yes.
We went to the National Weather Association conference. I'd say it was a lot of fun. Would you agree?
Very much so. If I could only go to one conference in my entire Penn State career, that would have been it.
I agree, and we had some nice weather while we were there.
Yes, it feels like the weather came back with us to Pennsylvania. It feels like late July than it does late September.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? We've been talking about the heat and the humidity for a while now. Will that keep up in the extended forecast?
The good news is what goes up must come down. Temperature's going to slide by about 20 to 25 degrees in some areas by the weekend. But the good news is plenty of sun and not a lot of rain for the next few days ahead.
I'll take the sunshine.
So will I.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jake. We'll be looking forward to your forecast later in the show. But as always, we'll start it off with nature in the news. Nearly a week after Hurricane Maria made landfall, millions of Puerto Ricans are still in the dark, desperate for food, water, and gas. As of Wednesday, about 97% of the island's 3.4 million residents were still in the dark, half of residents without any running water. The death toll from Maria currently stands at 16 in Puerto Rico, 27 on the island of Dominica, and 1 in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Unfortunately, the disaster response in Puerto Rico has been far slower than in U.S.-impacted Texas and Florida. Help is on the way from the U.S. government, and according to a tweet from FEMA this past Monday, more than 10,000 federal staff members were on the ground in Puerto Rico, supplying and aiding in search and rescue efforts. But the reality is, Puerto Rico is going through a natural disaster of their own. People have become desperate, using any means to find water, even if it means collecting from streams or lining up at gas stations before sunrise to collect fuel for their homes and generators.
Scientists in the Netherlands have discovered that the so-called polar vortex has weakened considerably over the last 40 years, and more frequent, more harsh winters in Europe and Russia are a direct result of this. Researchers at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research have determined that even though the Arctic is warming rapidly, freezing air from the polar regions are being unlocked and seeping down south. Strong polar winds many miles above the Earth's surface usually keep the polar vortex in check, but as these winds weaken, severe winters will become more and more common across the northern hemisphere. Surprisingly, however, researchers have also discovered that the melting sea ice is allowing warm air into the atmosphere, which further disturbs and weakens the vortex. Marlene Kretschmer, lead author of the study, said that the weaker polar vortex explains many of Eurasia's cold extremes since at least 1990. The study is due to be published in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society in the very near future.
Now in happier news, the Spring Creek chapter of Trout Unlimited in Center County has received a $160,000 grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation in order to improve habitats along 2 sections of Spring Creek. According to Robert Vierk, president of the chapter, the project will serve to improve water quality by reducing erosion, sedimentation, and nutrient inputs while creating a habitat for self-sustaining trout population. The project is expected to reduce over 1,000 pounds of nitrogen, nearly 300 pounds of phosphorus, and about 150 tons of sediment, a continuation of 15 highly successful stream restoration projects in the Spring Creek watershed since 1990.
Peak foliage season is on the horizon, and though New England may be the prime location to see the leaves change colors, the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation is trying to sway foliage chasers to come to the Keystone State. The department claims, quote, Pennsylvania has a longer, more varied fall foliage season than any other state in the nation, or really anywhere else in the world. According to Ryan Reed, an environmental education specialist with the Pennsylvania Bureau of Forestry, says it's actually theoretically possible to have a month-long trip to view the peak foliage across the state, beginning on September 27th in the north and concluding on October 25th in the southeast. Reed also says that Pennsylvania is unique in the fact that many northern and southern varieties of trees have their crossroads in Pennsylvania, And because of this and the fact that Pennsylvania has unique geography and microclimates, says the colors that result are, as he calls it, unparalleled. As the calendar flips from September to October, the weather will definitely feel more fall-like, at least in our neck of the woods. Here's our setup for the weekend ahead. We have an area of low pressure that's going to slide into our south and east. It's going to bring us cooler temperatures, cloudier skies, and maybe even a chance of rain for Friday night. Now, in terms of accumulation, it's not going to be that much, but if there is, it'll be on the order of maybe a few hundredths to maybe a tenth of an inch. Very doubtful at this point, but still the chance is there nonetheless. And out in the Atlantic, we have the former Hurricane Maria. It has now become extra tropical. It's going out into open water. The main story, though, is the shore will be safe. It is expected to stay well offshore. For Saturday, high pressure will build in as low pressure system slides its way down south. It'll bring us some sunnier skies and still cooler temperatures. And I can pretty much say the exact same thing for Sunday. High pressure continues to build. More fall-like temperatures, more fall-like conditions. So as we kick off the first weekend of October, things will be looking very fall-like indeed. For Friday, a mix of sun and clouds with a high of 68. For Friday night, though, clouds will continue to build, and we do invite the chance of showers into the picture, but again, it's very slim chance there'll be anything in the way of rainfall accumulation. Low 46, so if you're planning on going out, grab the rain jacket, grab the umbrella, grab a light jacket. It is going to be a little bit chilly out there, and maybe even a little bit damp, too. For Saturday, very fall-like indeed, mostly clear skies with a high of 63. If you're going to the football game this weekend, that would be a perfect game to go in terms of weather and the game atmosphere. Nittany Lions hoping to go 5-0 for the first time since 2008 against the Indiana Hoosiers. 3:30 kickoff, high of 61 degrees. It'll cool down by about 5 or 6 degrees as we go through the game, but no rain in sight, just a few stray clouds. Perfect fall-like weather indeed. And finally, Sunday, the first day of October, plenty of sunshine with a high of 66. If you want to soak up some autumn sunshine, do so. It is going to be a perfect time to do so. And now for this week's feature, we turn now to Kristy Steward, who has a report from the National Weather Association Conference in Anaheim, California.
Welcome to sunny Southern California. This is where 10 Penn State meteorology students, along with hundreds of other meteorologists across the country, traveled to last week to attend the National Weather Association's annual conference in Garden Grove, California. The National Weather Association, or NWA for short, is a professional association that supports operational meteorology. Forecasters and broadcasters meet to learn about better communication techniques and the new technology available to better convey their messages to you at home. The theme of this year's conference was Putting Science into Service. Its goal was to better connect the weather community in order to better serve the public. And there was certainly no shortage of events to attend to learn how to better serve our individual communities. The conference was broken into 2 segments, a student session and a professional session. During the student session, there was a tape swap where students interested in broadcast got tips on improvement from experts in the field, a mentoring session where students got advice from professionals in the field on how to pursue the career path they want to, and a forecasting workshop. During the professional session, presentations were given on ways to communicate more effectively and the new technology available to use. Posters were displayed explaining recent research projects, and luncheons to support minorities in meteorology were held. Each morning, the conference began with a student weather briefing. One of the students who gave a weather briefing, Nathan Liss, said it was a nerve-wracking but great experience.
We worked with one of the organizers of the weather briefing, and he helped us to set up a PowerPoint that we would go through for the briefing. And then we started off with the current conditions and then moved into the forecast. So we touched on tropical weather and also severe weather, and then just the general forecast for the country, then zooming down into where we were in California and giving a local weather forecast for there.
Outside of the conference, students were able to mingle with professionals.
Probably my favorite part was getting to have dinner with Louis Uccellini, the director of the National Weather Service. He's a very interesting guy to talk to.
There were dinners almost every night for students and other meteorologists to network and get to know each other in a non-formal setting. One night there was even karaoke following dinner. Well, it may not be the largest meteorology conference out there, but in the end, everyone who attended the 2017 National Weather Association Conference had a great time and learned a lot.
I wasn't really sure what to expect going to the NWA conference because I had always thought that, oh, I want to go into research. But after going to the conference, I really enjoyed some of the talks and also talking with the people, so it will definitely influence me in the future with my career path, and hope to be able to work with some of those individuals again in the future.
It was an invaluable experience for sure, one that I or any of the other Penn State students who attended won't forget. For Weather or Not, I'm Kristy Steward.
I promised you warmth and I promised you sunshine for your week ahead, and I will deliver on those promises, but first things first, weekend recap looks a little something like this, with the exception of those pesky rain showers coming Friday. Maybe it'll be quite dry for the weekend ahead. Temperatures a few degrees either side of average for this time of year. Overnight lows, though, a little bit on the nippy side. Lower 40s in most areas, probably maybe even down to 38, 39 in some areas. So if you're planning on going out, grab a sweater. The nip of fall is coming up fast and furious. And speaking of which, extended forecast, not a drop of rain to be found, at least for next week. Look at this, mostly cloudy skies, or even mostly clear skies for all next week. Temperature-wise, we start an upward trend back up to around 80 degrees for midweek. We start off at around 68 for Monday, Tuesday. We ramp up to 80 for Wednesday. That's about 15 degrees above where we should be for this time of year. But Thursday, Friday, we'll draw back a little bit. We'll be back in the mid-70s by the time next weekend rolls around. And again, like I said, no rain to be seen in the next few days ahead. Now, if we don't see any measurable rainfall for Friday night, which I expect we will not, it'll be possibly 20 to 25 days without measurable rainfall. The last time we had any precipitation in State College, by the way, was back on September 10th, so quite a streak we have going. But otherwise, dry conditions, mostly clear skies. I really can't think of a better way to start off the first weekend of October.
Well, thanks, Jake. That's a pretty nice looking extended forecast. I'll take the sunshine. I mean, we'll be warming back up, but at least not to where we are now, right?
And like I said, no rain to speak of for the next few days, so go ahead, put your umbrella away, enjoy this beautiful October sunshine while you can.
Absolutely, and hey, not too often we get to enjoy such a long period of dry days here in Central PA, so definitely get out and take advantage of it. Well, speaking of temperatures, we asked you earlier in the show, what is the latest date on record that State College reached 90 degrees? Was it A, September 19th, B, September 25th, C, October 7th, or D, October 14th? Well, if you guessed C, October 7th, you would be correct. On October 7th, 1941, State College reached a high of 90 degrees. Boy, can you imagine 90 degrees in October?
Yeah, I cannot. In October, I want to think about going to the pumpkin patch and maybe putting on my flannels for the first time all year. I don't want to think about putting on a bathing suit or running to the ice cream truck.
No, not at all. You like those cool fall nights, and you look forward to trick-or-treating. I don't think 90 degrees fits too well there.
Yeah, but we'll have plenty of cool fall nights soon enough.
Well, good. And I like the extended forecast, so we'll be looking forward to some nice fall-like weather here.
As am I.
Coming up, exactly. Well, we do thank you for joining us on this week's edition of Weather or Not. I'm your host, Juklo.
And I'm your forecaster, Jake Langedyk.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great weekend.